Ryan can't remember his own filing system to find the file he needs. So today, in Sam is a Hypocrite, you said in the last episode that you really want to see a competitor pit a house robot. And that got me thinking.
Oh no!
Which robots in the reboot have shown the ability to push a house robot around? And I can only think of one.
If you say Foxic, I'm going to be unhappy with you.
It's Foxic.
God damn it.
Series 8 Foxic, even in its largely not working state, is the only robot so far to have pushed any of the house robots around, got under dead metal, took it for a little ride. Foxic is good. Foxic is the best robot.
Well, it didn't pit
Bring back
anything, so...
Foxic.
Oh, God. It didn't pit that robot, so it's, whatever.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I'm not wrong. Like I said, I'm never wrong. Apart from the times I'm wrong.
So we have follow-up from Reddit again.
Where else is it going to be from?
I don't know. I feel like follow-up started off just being me correcting things I said or calling you out for being wrong.
So yeah, we've got a couple of things from Reddit. Reddit user Sid Jenkins has written to point out that there are similarities between the jetpack thing that Richard Browning has made and SpaceX landing rockets. He talks about a closed loop control system to control the thing. So it's not enough with landing a rocket to just say at this time set the throttle to be this thing. You need to be constantly having this feedback loop between where the rocket is in space and what the engines are doing. They're thrust vectoring and their throttling and all that kind of stuff, and the grid fins are obviously moving around and stuff to keep the rocket upright. It's an unstable system, and it requires constant feedback to correct that and keep it all upright. And the same would be true of the jetpack thing. However, the closed loop part of the jetpack thing is a human. It's not software.
That's what I was thinking.
As far as I can tell, the software I couldn't find much information about how this jetpack works, but as far as I can tell, most of the software is doing like clever heads-up display stuff for starting the engines up safely, stopping them safely, measuring fuel and making sure they don't run out of fuel in the air. It gives you like big warnings if there's a problem with the fuel and all that kind of stuff. But the actual process of keeping him upright and stable is sort of done instinctively by his brain. So that, like, it is sort of technically at a very high level, if you look at the whole system, it is technically like a closed loop control system. But
it's a closed loop control system in terms of a human nervous system is a closed loop system. Exactly.
So, and because of that, I still don't think, having thought about it more, that they are comparable. I think if they'd done a drone, if they'd shown a drone with the 4 props and stuff, which is similarly unstable, that would be closer, I think. Maybe, I don't know. That's what I think though. And I think because all the control comes from, or most of the control comes from Richard and not from a computer sort of adjusting things, as far as I can tell. Again, maybe I'm massively wrong, I don't know. But as far as I can tell, it's all him moving around. So is it the same? Are they comparable? I don't know. But to clarify, the biggest issue was that, like, even if that's the point they're making, that the control systems may or may not be similar, that wasn't at all clear in the episode, and it was a bit of a pointless segment, really.
Now, my initial position on this was that the two ideas are completely comparable. And I still feel that, but I also feel that this comment is inherently wrong. Because, maybe there's more about that piece of tech than I realise, but as you say, it does seem to be human-controlled. I'd say the similarities are more in terms of the physics of what's happening. Now, physics is a notoriously risky subject, so I'm not going to get too far towards it, but the basics of let's use downwards thrust to slow down our fall and control it, and let's use a little thrust vectoring to make sure we're not going sidey-sidey, fronty-fronty at the time, that's where the similarity is for me.
And that's... I agree with you, but like that's such a loose, so far away from the interesting parts of it. It's such a loose similarity that it's just not enough, I don't think, to justify comparing them.
That comparison was made so that they could bring up SpaceX and also misname it.
Yeah.
That's the only reason they did that. They wanted to mention a big tech company, and that was the way they found to do it. It was tenuous, but frankly, so's every Judges segment. They're all basically the BBC's way of replacing Tomorrow's World. They very rarely carry any value in terms of the show. I also think they very rarely carry any value educationally. And if I get my way, that is something that there may be more on.
Okay. I guess the other thing that they get to do is show off that Great Britain has the closest thing to Iron Man. So there you go.
Also extremely important. Although, Mark Watney did it first, so... Although only in the film version, and it sucks.
Oh dear.
And what was the other comment you wanted to look at?
Hovering Porridge explains about Sabretooth's drum. I was complaining that it didn't really seem to be very effective or do anything. And apparently on Inside the Bot, they talk about this, and they're using two motors to drive that drum. 2 brushless drives, and this was causing them issues where one was burning the other out. And so that's why it didn't really sort of spin up properly. They had these 2 motors that they weren't working together harmoniously.
I'd love to say more, but I still haven't had time to catch up on the other Robot Wars podcasts from last week, because obviously try quite hard not to listen to them before doing this, and I just haven't had a chance to catch up. But that sounds completely sensible. And didn't that comment also say that they switched back to the old weapon system for the 10-way?
Yeah, so in the big melee they've got going on, they're using the old drive system for the drum. So hopefully we will see it in all its glory. Looking forward to seeing that.
Something else to mention, by the way, in terms of robot designs from that episode, the AMA with Apocalypse brought up how the grabbers work.
Oh yeah?
Now, in our preview episode, we looked at that and assumed it was maybe on some kind of cord.
Yeah.
What we were actually seeing was an inflatable air bladder that was used to make them work.
What?
And it's one of those things that I understand how that works, but I couldn't even begin to explain why it works.
So does it inflate and then in doing so contract and put it around, or does it inflate and because the radius of that thing has got bigger, it pushes the things around?
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those party blower things. It starts up curled up, and when you put air through it, it all goes widey and straight. And this is why I no longer teach.
That is an interesting way of driving those grabbers.
What it is a very lightweight way of driving them, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
It's lightweight. I also imagine it's pretty reliable.
I don't know. I don't think they moved enough for us to tell.
That was apparently because they were having trouble retracting them, put stronger bungee on, and then it was too strong.
Yeah.
I do think that the whole grabber thing was as aesthetic as it was effective, but I still really like the idea of it, and I'd like to see him make it work.
Yeah. Well, next time.
Next time.
I have one final piece of follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
In the last episode, I boldly predicted that the title sequence was gone forever, and we would always have a cold open that goes straight into the episode with nothing else. And I was wrong. While they preserved the cold open, the show just kind of started with Dara and Angela talking. There was then a title sequence, a different one to last series, but a title sequence nonetheless that sort of marked the beginning of what was actually going to happen. So I was wrong.
Cold opens are cool and all that, but this is better. This is just better.
Yeah, it feels more natural.
And I'm still really sad that we didn't have it for the first episode, because that's when you're at peak hype.
Yeah.
And it killed all of that for me. Even the cold open feels a bit weird, because it's the kind of thing I'd expect to see on something like Strictly. And that's part of my wider gripe with this series so far. I will say, I've enjoyed this episode a lot more than the one before it.
Yeah.
Especially on first viewing last time, I was very annoyed about a lot of things. As I rewatched it, I got used to a lot of it. It's kind of fine. But there are some worries I have about it still, in terms of, I feel like there's a little bit more manufactured drama. It's something we had in Series 8, it kind of went away for Series 9, and now it's back with a vengeance. So they're kind of going on about the kill switch thing, which was completely fake. They're trying to big up a sort of broken alliance between Will and Michael from Aftershock and Eruption.
Yeah.
And then the one that really gets me, and I have no evidence for this, but I can't help thinking that every team in the field is going to be taking spare batteries with them. I do not for a second believe that Carbide were in danger of going out because they didn't have batteries.
I mean, Dave and Sam, they looked pretty stressed. I think. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but like they did not look comfortable after that fight.
In this segment, in the edit, can you just put in the whole Patrick Stewart acting thing instead of me saying this? Because it'll be better.
Okay. I'm not doing that.
I'm fairly certain that is just either good acting or good editing of things that were actually worrying them, but then they try to craft this narrative. It may have all been true. I may be completely off with this. But I refuse to believe that there was ever any danger of them going out. Batteries are a basic thing, and they can just go wrong. If you're taking spare weapon motors, surely you're taking spare batteries, and even then, everyone in the field is going to be using vaguely the same batteries. Unless there's something I'm missing in terms of electronics, which is possible, batteries are vaguely interchangeable, right?
I don't know. So one of they sort of talk about like battery is like a stat that's on the website, right? I don't know how accurate these stats are, but they are not the same as necessarily other ones. I mean, maybe they are. I don't know. I haven't built enough robots.
You can put things in parallel or in series in different combinations to get either the same voltage, the same current, or the same battery life, as it were. Is that vaguely correct?
I mean, I think there's some room for that kind of thing, but like, I mean, for example, so like according to the Robot Wars website, Eruption has got 5-cell batteries at 18.5 volts, and then Crackers and Smash has 12-cell batteries at 44 volts. I wouldn't want to be putting Crackers and Smash batteries in Eruption, or vice versa. You're either going to destroy something or it's not going to work. So like they are all sort of like listing different things.
It just seems like such a basic component that surely there's enough stuff lying around. Let's face it, the house robots all have batteries. We have seen parts from house robots used on competitors before. Surely there was some other way of doing this than ordering it and it turning up conveniently last minute. It all just feels a bit... It's too good a story.
That's the bit that's suspicious. Like, where on earth are they ordering these batteries from that they're arriving the same day? You know, it's like, I feel like there's not same-day delivery on anything outside of London. Maybe I'm wrong, but like big cities maybe have it. And you know, maybe you can do it in...
I mean, Glasgow's a pretty big city.
But the other thing is, where has same-day delivery of something as niche as big batteries, you know?
To be fair, it probably... If it did happen that way, it wouldn't be order it and they deliver. It would be the BBC send out a runner in a car.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. It still seems unlikely to me that you could find somewhere in Glasgow that has those batteries that they need, you know? It's odd. I know what you mean. Like, it's difficult to call because they did look very stressed. I fully believe, if they were acting, they're very good at it. I fully believe that they were really stressed about something. But like, yeah, the convenience of the batteries are turning up last minute is sort of like, it's a bit too good to be true. There's a bit, you know, it feels a bit fishy.
And as much as we got bogged down in a lot of that, the thing I find most unbelievable is that they didn't have a set of spares.
Yeah, this is true.
I mean, how many teams? Maybe it is a thing. Maybe it's a component that's so reliable that people don't worry about it. But surely you have spare batteries. Surely, if anything, you've got a set that are in the robot and a set that are charging. It just seems insane to me that wouldn't be how that works.
I'll have to listen to Inside the Box. I feel like...
It's a very good podcast, almost as good as this.
But I feel like Team Carbide were on that and maybe they talked about it, so I'll have to go listen to that.
Yes, although I don't know how willing all teams are to sort of pull back the curtain on these things.
Yeah. This is true.
So Will Thomas from Aftershock in the AMA openly said, yeah, the whole kill switch thing was completely fake.
Yeah, made me laugh.
Whereas, you know, perhaps a team that have still got a grand final to come up are going to be less willing to say stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm doing a lot more speculation today than I'd like to do, which is possibly a result of not doing this about 6 months after the fact when all of the information's come out. It's really hard being contemporaneous.
Yeah. Well, shall we move on?
I have a lot more I could say about the show if you want me to. Is now the right time to review Fog of War?
Yeah, go on then.
Fog of War is still terrible.
Yeah, there's always time to complain about Fog of War.
I mean, maybe there will be a fight this series where Fog of War has a meaningful impact. Whether that will be a good or bad thing, we will debate at the time. But I am fairly certain that in the one use of Fog of War we saw this week, they edited it down.
Yes.
That's supposed to last for
definitely.
10 seconds. I timed it at 8, and half of that was pointless cutaways. Yes, I timed it. I'm sad.
I reckon all the robots just stopped moving. I reckon they just were like, yeah, right, we're done. But no one move for Fog of War.
Because what else would you do? That is the objectively best tactical decision for most machines.
Yeah, and in Fog of War, am I right in thinking that the house robots can go rogue in that time as well? So
All they
I
seem
feel
to do is spin around.
they sort of spin or maybe drive from one corner to the other, but like the house robots have exactly the same problem that competitors have, which is they can't see where they're going. So I feel like the house robots going rogue in that is to try and stop competitors from just sitting still while Fog of War happens, but then utterly fails because the house robots can't really do anything. If they get lucky driving straight across the arena in a straight line and hitting a robot, then that has achieved something. But it's a bit of a lucky shot.
If it worked the way that we originally assumed it did, that would make perfect sense. Competitors can't see, audience cameras and house robots can. Go nuts.
Yeah.
10 seconds of mayhem could potentially change the course of a fight. The one thing I would love to see is Fog of War go off, it all clears and just someone's down the pit and no one knows what happened. That would be quite funny. Unless it was a robot I liked, then it would be horrendous. Imagine the grand final going down to that.
Oh, God. I mean, so like when we were doing our predictions episode, I did say at some point something is going to happen where a robot that shouldn't win will win because of Fog of War. And it hasn't happened yet, but there's still time. And that will be unspeakably irritating, especially if it's in the grand final.
It's just manufacturing incidents. Big robots smashing each other is already exciting. You don't need to work too hard to make it more exciting. Just do the best job you can of showing what happens, and you'll have something good. It's just,
I feel like
that being media studies, man, it's coming back.
even Jonathan Pierce was having a hard time making this sound exciting. Like he sort of just gave up at the end of this one. I can't tell what's going on either. It's like he's got nothing to say because there is nothing to say. And I think every time it happens, it's going to get more and more obvious that he has nothing to say, and Dara and Angela can add nothing, and all the rapid cuts in the world aren't going to make that segment any more exciting.
It already feels like they're building up to drop it.
Well, they can't drop it now, can they? Like it's all done.
Well, I mean, for another series.
Yeah, for a next series, I hope they do drop it. I mean, we did get that wide shot this time. We got like an actual wide shot of most of the arena, and it doesn't fill the whole arena. There are definitely spots, particularly in the corners, where there is no smoke.
But I suppose the corners are already the CPZs, so people don't want to be there full stop.
Yeah, just disappointing. Silly idea.
Oh well, I'll leave my complaining for there and save some more for next time.
Tune in next week for more complaints about the format.
With all that said, I think the first two fights of this episode are two of the best we've seen in the reboot.
Yeah.
The second melee less so. That was interesting for other reasons. But that opening melee... In fact, you know what? I'm going to go as far as saying, name me a better fight in Robot Wars, full stop.
In all of Robot Wars history. Now there's a challenge.
I'm willing to talk about going that far. Because recording things makes you really tentative. Should we take a look at who we've got in there?
Yeah, sure, let's go for it.
What order would you like to go in?
I have them listed alphabetically.
Of course you do. I have them listed the opposite of alphabetically. But you take us where you need to take us.
So first up, we have Big Nipper. Well, I mean, so overview, the whole melee is Big Nipper, Carbide and Gabriel. But, if you're listening to this and don't know who was in this melee, then maybe you should find a different podcast to listen to.
So, Big Nipper, have your moment. I know you want to do it.
Gripper Spinner!
It's nice to know you're happy.
That video where someone edited all the spinners together is glorious. Yes. That's my favourite video I've seen in a long time.
It really charts the evolution of the word, doesn't it?
It's just brilliant.
This is the second... Was it a gripper spinner we had before or a lifter spinner with high five?
There was a lifter spinner as well, yeah.
I want to see a robot come in with 7 or 8 different weapons and then just list all of them. If anything, that should have happened for the Swarm.
Oh, yeah, it was just like Clusterbot. Sorry, Clusterbot! But it wasn't... Yeah,
we know that you've got opinions on that left over as well, don't we? God.
I got downvoted so much in the Reddit.
That's because you gave a one-word answer. Never give a one-word answer.
No, yeah, those downvotes are justified. I completely understand them. That was the correct thing to downvote.
Now, Big Nipper, there's a lot to like here. But you know what I'm most happy with? The fact we've still got the big. There was a lot of talk of them just being called Nipper, and that would have been weird to me. It's Big Nipper, and it always should be.
Yeah,
Not
I
that they
agree.
did any nipping. At no point did they attempt to nip.
How would you define a nip then?
Well, that depends on which meaning of the word we're going for.
How would you define nipping something?
Using the pincers, basically. Give
Okay,
it a little
yeah.
nip, like a little bite.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
It is one hell of a robot. And we've
Yeah.
always known this. It didn't necessarily show it in its last outing. I'm not sure it necessarily showed it in this outing either. But you'll be very hard pushed to find a more solidly engineered robot in the field anywhere. This is like BattleBots level refinement in a robot.
It'd be nice if there was BattleBots level aggression in the driving, but there you go.
That's very true. I mean, there was quite... we definitely saw the best of the drive system. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's a robot that can definitely move.
It is mobile most of the time.
I mean, its opening round in the melee was a bit of a disappointment because I think it got hit by a carbide, or no, it got hit by Gabriel and lost its drive very quickly. There was a really good video from the Gabriel guy whose name is it Craig?
Craig Collias, yeah.
Yeah, who he did a good video, sort of like doing like a explanation for how Gabriel sort of took out this robot, and so he got like an entanglement, one of these entanglement bolts stuck in the wheel on the back of Big Nipper and took out his drive basically instantly. So it wasn't really in the first fight at all, unfortunately.
No, although it was nice of them to sit there with the weapon spun up anyway and just be an obstacle. I quite like that. It's like, well, we're here, we might as well be dangerous.
Yeah. Just become another arena hazard.
This is the thing with the new format. Last series, we wouldn't have seen them again.
Yeah.
And we would have lost out on a lot by not seeing them again.
Yeah.
Because it is clearly a very good robot. And that weapon, the noise it makes is really weird. Because we're used to big spinners making a noise, but that thing sounds like a strimmer. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's a solid disc and it's got the two teeth. I don't know if that just, affects the sound, but it doesn't sound nearly as dangerous as it clearly is.
I think there's just a bit more to vibrate as well. Because that spinner's on that lifting arm, it's...
True.
there's a bit more that could be vibrating and generating that noise.
Hadn't thought of it like that. That's smart.
Physics.
That's why I let you on my podcast.
Your podcast? Remind you who hosts and edits this.
Can I remind you whose idea? No, I'm not going to go down that road.
It's
way madness
it's our
lies.
podcast.
You begged me to do it. Let's move away from this. This is bad territory. Yeah, I don't know how far ahead we want to get in the episode, but they showed what the weapon could do with some of the hits they did land. They also showed that they could take hits as well.
Yeah.
What they can't do is land. Landing is a real weakness of Big Nipper.
Why do you say that? They always got themselves back the right way up again.
Oh yeah, it was just the damage they took when they hit the ground.
Yeah. That's true of any robot, though.
Well, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Hashtag not wrong. Of course, it would be a bigger weakness if you just never landed.
Just fly away forever.
It's really hard to win a fight from orbit.
I don't know, you've got like orbital bombardment. If you drop a tungsten rod on someone, that's going to do some damage.
No projectile weapons.
Is it a projectile if it just falls from space?
You would have to impart energy to it to make it come out of orbit.
That's true. That is true. Well, there you go. No orbital bombardment on a technicality.
Damn it. Ruining everything.
So Big Nipper had another fight against Crackers and Smash was their next one, which started off a bit and then they sent Smash nearly into orbit. I feel like if the ceiling wasn't there or if the lighting rig wasn't there, maybe they would have gone into orbit.
We
It was
would never have seen it again.
Yeah, that was such a big hit. It was incredible.
It's easy to take a lot away from that hit because obviously it is a half-weight robot.
Yeah, but still.
Even if it just sent a heavyweight half that height, that would still be incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
And I really don't know how they've packed that much power into what is a relatively low diameter disc.
I don't know how they've got that much power in it either. I think a big part of how that was so spectacular was because it was a smaller robot, but they must have also just got a particularly good bite on Smash there as well to send it quite that high. I'm sort of especially surprised because they must have, because their weapon system has the lifting part to it. I feel like it's not as heavy as it could be. If that was a fixed disc, they could put a bit more weight into it and stuff. So it is very impressive that it can send things that high and that fast.
And really, Big Nipper, because of that, movement of the spinner, is one of the best possible robots to take on Gabriel. Because it's one of very few that could actually reach to hit it. But it never got the chance because it got taken out first hit in the melee.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. It's funny, like, Carbide is the most damaging robot, but also probably one of the least equipped to actually deal with Gabriel. It's interesting.
I mean, realistically, who is equipped to deal with Gabriel? If we're going to look at, as I like to, if we're going to look at fighting robots as a set of problems and their solutions, Gabriel isn't a problem that you plan for.
No. But
Gabriel
I think
isn't
you're
a
right.
problem that you try to solve.
I think you're right, though, that Big Nipper is probably most able to do damage to it, and I think, and as we see later on, Aftershock is well equipped for dealing with it as well, for the most part, because they can hit the body as opposed to the wheels.
Yes, but even then they're only going to be glancing it, really.
Aftershock do, yeah, but you know what I mean. Like having that, I think vertical spinners in general, especially ones that can get up high, are the ones. I mean, to damage Gabriel, you need to be able to hit the body of it, and I think the vertical spinners are a way of doing that, or possibly a hammer. But then the problem with the hammers is you've got the wheels that are going to bend out and absorb a bunch of that energy. So
yeah, which is why Gabriel's done so well on the live tour.
Yeah.
Since we're on it, can we talk about Gabriel? I know it ruins your alphabetical order, but we're there anyway.
Go for it.
I've been very critical of Gabriel before, even more critical of Cherub, but I have learned to really respect it as a robot. And this performance absolutely cements that respect.
Yeah, the team and the robot have definitely grown on me in the last 3 series of Robot Wars.
It isn't the sort of robot that you want to see a whole field of. It's not even necessarily a robot you would want to see a second of.
No.
But it has given us what so many people wanted to see, and that is a fight against a big spinner that has gone the distance.
Yeah, absolutely incredible.
And again, when you think back through, I was going to say the whole of Robot Wars, maybe series 5 or 6 onwards, when do you ever see a robot go the full 3 minutes against a big spinner that is working for 3 minutes?
Yeah, I think that's sort of the key thing. I think there have been fights where there's been a spinner in the arena technically for 3 minutes, but yeah, to have a robot that can survive being hit for 3 minutes by a big spinner is a remarkable thing to have achieved.
The only fight I can even think to compare this to would be Beta versus Tombstone from BattleBots. That's the only thing that to me is even close to what they've done here. And I'll say that there's no way they're in contention for a judge's decision here. They have definitely lost this fight. That is not contentious. But the fight they have put up is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Angela reckoned that they should win. She was calling Gabriel for the judge's decision at the end of that.
Yes, and that's facile. There isn't a single criteria you could give that to Gabriel on, as far as I'm concerned.
No, not at all. Yeah, so surviving 3 minutes against Carbide is not enough to win the fight, but it is still an achievement, undeniably. And I think they fully deserved the Guard of Honour at the end of there. I really like that.
Oh, yes.
It's a really nice thing to see.
I feel like for the sake of follow-up, or avoidance of follow-up, I should go in a bit more what I'm saying about the judge's decision here. Damage, they obviously don't get. Control is maybe evens, because they do manage to land some hits, but obviously they get a lot of hits landed on them.
What? So, can you just clarify what they mean by control? Is it how much control you have over your own robot, or is it how much control you have over the fight?
I would define it as how effectively you use the tools available to you.
I've always took it to mean like how much control you have over your own robot. If you're like running into walls constantly, I've always sort of seen that as you should be losing points for that. But then I think there are a few.
The worm criterion.
And then there are a few. Worm. There are a few comments from the judges we saw in this that made me question that. Like they're talking about control, and it seemed like they were talking about control in terms of controlling the fight. I don't know.
But that's a subset of aggression, surely.
Yeah, I would have thought so, yeah. It was just made me think hearing what they were talking about is all.
I'd want to look into that more because there should be a proper definition of it somewhere.
Yeah.
Because, of course, the hard thing for Gabriel with control is that due to the damage they've taken, they've lost traction, which at that point makes meaningful control very difficult.
Yeah. But, don't worry about traction. Just keep driving.
Yeah, that was one of my favourite quotes of the whole thing. Don't worry about traction, keep driving. Yeah, don't worry about the thing that makes driving possible. And I have heard people say that they should win this fight because they did damage to Carbide's wheel. Well, you're not wrong. But at the same time, Carbide did more damage to their wheels.
Significantly more damage, yeah. That was a hair-raising moment, really, when Carbide was stuck on top of half of its tyre. And it was like, is that going to be able to get off in time? That was like a bit of a moment there.
And that moment is exactly why I wouldn't give aggression to Gabriel. That is the moment to go in and hit them a couple of times.
Yeah.
But instead, they've just given them time to get off. And if Carbide hadn't got flipped over by one of its own hits, I don't think the whole tyre thing would have affected their mobility as much as it did. But what it created was a situation where that slightly raised section where I think their chain must run through was catching on the ground as they were going.
Yeah.
And they were kind of spinning on that point after they scored a hit as well.
Yeah. Still, they were surprisingly mobile, I think, given that they were missing half a wheel. I was sort of impressed. I was impressed they could still drive in a straight line.
That's a team that should know how to deal with losing their tyres. After what happened with Cobalt, they've got practice.
Do you want to talk about Carbide?
Is there anything to say about Carbide? Really?
It's another one like Bearmoth, isn't it? It's still a good robot, and there's not much else to say. The thing that made me laugh was that it's apparently 20% improved, but we have no idea what metric they're on about there.
What? I don't remember this quote.
Do you know? I think it was another classic Jonathan Pierce moment. They've upgraded it by a further 20%. And that's it. It's like, what? 20%? What do you mean? Is it 25% faster? 20% faster, 20% more energy in the tip of the weapon? What's going on here? Who knows? 20% more battery capacity?
Not anymore.
No battery capacity now.
That's probably just, today in Jonathan Pierce picks an arbitrary number.
I mean, it's an arbitrary number that's stuck because it's on the website as well.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, I shall read you part of the website. Reigning champions Sam and Dave, not satisfied with their endless destruction they caused last series, have upgraded their robot by a further 20%. That is what's written on this website.
So what you've got there is one figure is now 20% larger than it used to be.
Yeah.
And they've run with that. It's got to be, hasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what figure, though.
I don't know. Tip speed, energy they're carrying, especially since they've got the heavier bar as well.
It's got to be something like that.
But as we know, numbers and statistics in Robot Wars are basically useless. 7 tons of flip. It's just numbers to sound impressive.
Numbers for top trumps cards.
And also, really, the most important statistic you have with Carbide is how often it breaks down. Which is that it doesn't anymore.
Not very often.
Yeah, that's the thing that actually makes Carbide a great spinner.
It made me chuckle in his interview thing where he was talking about how reliability is the greatest strength of Carbide. He talks about it like it's always been reliable. And I'm like, the first time I saw it, I'm not sure you could call that reliable. But, the last couple of things is definitely a reliable robot. It's astonishing that it could, as astonishing as it is that Gabriel could take hits from Carbide for 3 minutes, I think it's equally astonishing that Carbide could deliver those hits for 3 minutes, That's a remarkable thing to have achieved there as well.
I'm trying to think back to Series 8. There were 3 fights, I think, where the bar broke down. Terahertz, TR2, and the grand final with Apollo. Can you think of any others? Because those are all fights that they lost. I think every fight where it worked, they won.
Yeah,
and every
I think
fight
that
where they
sounds
won,
about
it
right.
worked.
I couldn't remember off the top of my head. I wouldn't be able to tell you any other times that it broke. I feel like, my feeling is that they had problems with it in every fight. I don't recall that it worked perfectly every time, but it was effective for at least some of the fights.
I think they had repairs to do after every fight.
Yeah.
Whereas in the last series, we didn't really see them have to fix anything.
No.
And I think that is why they really clung on to the whole batteries thing. As, oh look, Carbide are actually working on their robot now, and isn't this exciting?
They actually have to repair it.
Can I make a really geeky point?
No, unacceptable.
Okay. So the next melee.
What is your geeky point?
I got stupidly excited isn't the word, but I had a little flash of recognition when during that fight there was a cutaway to Toby driving Gabriel, and in his hands was a Spectrum DX6i, essentially the official transmitter of Robot Combat. And I just loved that I recognised that, because that is something that before this podcast would not have jumped out to me at all.
That is something else to have noticed, I have to say.
Once you know what it looks like, it's a very distinctive transmitter. That's all I'm saying.
I believe you.
On a less geeky point, there was something I noticed in the interview in the arena after the fight, which is that everyone seems very happy to walk over the arena hazards.
Yeah, unnervingly happy. I guess they trust it's all been shut down.
Because in
Even
Heat
so.
A, when Dara went over to speak with James from Donald Thump,
Yeah.
he sort of was stood on the pit and went, "Oh, I'll get off of that,"
Yeah.
because that's obviously the correct thing to do.
Yeah.
But then I think it's Dave Moulds is just like stood on the spikes.
Just is this where Angela gave him a broom as well?
Yeah, that was
Weird. That didn't land at all. I feel like if she'd done that with a different competitor, it might have worked. But Dave was like, whatever, and he just held it. He didn't do anything with it.
He was always going to brush that right off, wasn't he? Should we look at the next melee then?
Yes.
What order would you like to do these three robots in?
Whatever order you choose.
Okay, let's start off with Eruption. I, by the way, am going in the order they were introduced.
Okay.
This is another one where I'd absolutely love to talk about the upgrades, but they haven't decided to tell us about them. So let's assume that there are some.
Yeah, it is presumably a more reliable, in some way better robot.
What I do like is they've got rid of the little extra weapons, which I think is one of those things that is a perk of having come second last time round and knowing you're going to get accepted no matter what.
Yeah. That's true.
Something else I noticed in the Carbide fight was that they seem to have slightly changed their anti-spinner pods. Don't know if you noticed this?
They look flatter, I think. But
Yeah. They've
yeah,
gone for a slightly lower angle. It's sort of a two-stage curve on it almost now, which made absolutely no difference. Probably could have, but it made no difference.
Yeah, they were unlucky with that fight, I think. So in our predictions episode, I put it to you that Carbide was going to win, and the only robot that stood a chance of, or was likely to actually stop them, was Eruption. And I want to take this moment to claim that I was spot on.
Were you spot on? Did Eruption look like stopping them?
I think I think I'm spot on because it was a Carbide Eruption heat final, which I think means I was right.
That
it was
wasn't
between
that much
them.
of a contentious shout to say that last year's top two were going to be the top two in the heat that they shared.
And then I think had Carbide not got that, I'm going to say it was a lucky nick right at the beginning of the fight on Eruption's drive there, I think Michael stood a good chance of beating Carbide. Because Michael is such a phenomenal driver, I do think he would have been able to outdrive Carbide. Maybe.
What
We'll
makes
never
you
know
say that
now.
when he didn't last time?
Because he's had experience now. He's more experience. He's going to get better every time. I do think his driving is getting better. He's much more. I don't know. He's just because he didn't do it last time doesn't mean he's never going to be able to do it. You know,
I
It stands to
completely see
reason.
that, but I think you're showing a little too much confidence in that ability.
I'm not saying that like he would always win. I just think like of all the robots in this heat, I think he stands the most chance of beating Carbide, like properly beating Carbide, and I think had he not lost drive, I think he might have managed it. Not saying he would have managed it, I just think he might have done.
If we're going to talk about robots in this heat, every single one of them has a legitimate chance of beating Carbide. Every single one of them, and I genuinely mean that. So Gabriel, we already saw, gave them a run for their money. If Carbide's weapon did break down there, that's a very
Well,
different
that's the
fight.
thing. That's the thing. That's like I can understand why you'd say that every other robot, ignoring Gabriel, could beat them. I agree with you, but I think Gabriel is the robot that can outlast Carbide. I think Gabriel
And
will win.
sometimes that means winning.
Yeah, but I know. So like, I know that they can win, but like on the condition that Carbide breaks, they can win, and that's more Carbide losing the fight more than Gabriel winning the fight. You know, whereas something like Aftershock could definitively win that fight with a good hit, and then it's not that Carbide broke down and lost; it's that Aftershock won, and I think that's a difference. That's a sort of a difference that's worth bearing in mind. It's worth pointing out.
I think you're falling into the Gabriel doesn't do damage trap, and that is not a place that you want to be.
I think it does do damage. I don't think it does enough damage to beat Carbide unless Carbide doesn't have its weapon in some way, unless Carbide's weapon does it, or if they got stuck on top of their wheel. But that's still, it's not a definitive win in the way that Aftershock could definitively win, or Eruption could definitively win. Eruption could throw them out of the arena. It's a definitive win, and Aftershock could, or Big Nipper for that matter, could do a big upward cut on the weapon that disables it, or they could do all kinds of damage to Carbide to disable it. Whereas I just think Gabriel would have to get a bit lucky in some way with Carbide breaking down or getting stuck on something for it to sort of win a fight. I don't know.
I'll rephrase what I said then. I think Gabriel is the most likely to cause Carbide's weapon to break by tanking enough hits to get to that point, because even the best designed spinner can only take so much punishment. You can only deliver so many big hits. And broadly speaking, with the best spinners, so your Carbide, your Tombstones, etc., the opponent breaks first. Now, I'm not saying that is the most reliable way of winning. It's very far from that. But factor into that Gabriel can then do some damage to them, as proven by the fact they did damage to them. Yeah. Also, the potential for the entanglement to work, as unlikely as I think that is, there's potential there. There's absolutely no reason to look at that and go, Gabriel have lost before that fight starts. When honestly, there are a lot of robots you look at and go, the only chance they have is if Carbide goes in and the link falls out.
I don't think that's the only chance, but I just don't think Gabriel can definitively win in the way that other robots can against Carbide. But as ever, I'd love to be wrong.
That's what I used to think as well. And that should make it really easy to argue against, but it doesn't. I suppose the key thing is that Gabriel, like every other robot in this heat, has a property, has something about it that is useful or positive, I suppose, when you're weighing up its chances against something like Carbide. So with Aftershock and Big Nipper, as you said, they can deliver big uppercutting hits. With Crackers and Smash, you've got a very, very, very good, thick Armox wedge on Crackers.
Yeah.
With Eruption, it's a flipper. All of those are things that are very good to have going for you when going in against a good horizontal spinner. And for Gabriel, it is basically the ability to be hit and keep going.
Yeah. I think if they were all evenly driven, I think I would agree with you more. I'm not saying you're completely wrong. I completely see where you're coming from, but I think the fact that Michael is the one driving Eruption sort of really makes Eruption stand out as the one that I think is most likely to beat Carbide of all of them. I think they all can do it. I think Eruption's the most likely. Simply because of Michael.
Yeah, I think there are others I would put up close. I think there are. If we're talking robots outside of this heat, there are others much more likely to. So if you're looking at flippers as a group of things, I think that Eruption as a build is one of the most poorly equipped to take on Carbide, because you've got the drive basically attached to those side plates. And that's what's done them both times they faced them. One hit on the side is all it's ever really taken to damage the drive. They were going around in circles for most of the grand final last year. They were going around in circles from basically the start of this one.
Yeah.
Eruption is objectively a poorly designed robot for horizontals.
Okay.
Whereas if you look at something like Apollo or Iron Ore, they have got a better chance purely because there's more air gap inside of them. There are more places they can be hit and it won't affect something important. And they still have that ability to do what Eruption could do, which is get them out of the arena. That's where your driving point becomes more relevant.
Yeah. Okay.
Although, to be honest, I can't comment on the driving of Iron Ore yet because I've not seen them fight except on live events where it's a tiny arena.
Yeah, interesting to see what they're like in terms of that. I don't know. Yes, Eruption is not necessarily the best design for this, but I don't know. I feel like Michael's driving does make up for a lot of it.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think Eruption was the second best build in the last series, but it was absolutely the second best performer. And that's because the driving makes up for any deficits in the design. It's also, I'm going to say now, it's also a very good design.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it is bad because it's not basically best. It's still extremely good. But there are others that you look at and go, they've got that little bit more about them.
Okay.
And one of the ones I would have been putting above them last time is Aftershock. But this time round, I don't think Aftershock was very good.
No, it just wasn't quite there, was it? It was a bit of a disappointment, really.
It had been refined in slightly weird ways that, kind of like Sabretooth, had always made it lose touch of what made it good and just ended up turning into downgrades. So I love this idea that they've made it a bit shorter, which has freed up a bit of weight to go all hard ox armour. Fantastic. But everything's then super compact, and it's got issues where basically if you hit it anywhere, you hit something important.
Yep.
It's got the heavier disc, which has meant they've had a lot more problems with gyro, so driving has been harder.
Yep.
And it would have been nice if I had a third thing, because lists of 3 sound better, but I don't. That's 2, and I think it's enough.
It just wasn't quite. It wasn't quite performing at its best. I don't think it's a bit of a shame, really.
Not that it was put in a position to perform at its best either, really.
No, it was a really, really tough heat for them to be in. Absolutely, but still a shame not to see them.
And if they come through the melee as winners, maybe it's all very different.
Yeah.
Do you know my favourite thing about the Crackers and Smash intro?
No, I do not.
The fact that they spoke about having 2 robots making for double the destruction, even though one of them is a lifter.
Yeah, half the destruction.
Less than half the destruction, I'd argue. But maybe slightly more control.
This is interesting, actually. It's sort of... I'm not a big fan of cluster bots. At least the way they're done, as probably become apparent.
Yeah,
over
because
the
we all
course
know
of,
you'd love it if they just had a little bit of fishing wire joining them when they came in. Yeah, next thing. That would make them objectively better, wouldn't it? That would be entertainment. That's good telly, that. Robots that are linked together and then not.
This is not the point of what I'm about to say. What I'm about to say is that it makes me feel like if you're going to do cluster bots, you should go like the Swarm and do lots of little ones and not 2 half-weight ones.
I really want to see how far you can push that. Could you come in with a swarm of 20 5-kilo robots and make the opponents take out 10 and just drive away for the whole battle?
Yeah, you'd lose on the judge's decision there, but like come in with an absolute shed load of ant weights.
What if the other one breaks down, Sam? What then?
Well, if the one breaks down, then you can get some free damage points.
What if you sacrificially just wedge 4 of your robots under them, 1 near each wheel so they can't touch the ground? What then, Sam? What then?
What do you mean, what then? Then you win.
Do you win, or would that come under the pinning rules that we kind of have but never really get spoken about of you can't hold on to an opponent for more than a certain amount of time?
I reckon what you need is you need one robot that's big enough to go and activate the pit release button, or maybe just a robot that goes near the pit release button is enough.
Well, breathing near the pit release button is enough. So.
just go there and breathe, and then get yourself under each wheel of the robot, and then because you've got enough robots to do this, you could just drive all 4 of those into the pit with the other robot on top of you and still win.
Good luck making those powerful enough to carry a heavyweight, but you know, we are told it's possible for a mini bot to have enough pushing power, so who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, you never know. But yeah, Crackers and Smash, I don't know. I don't think they really stood a chance, to be honest.
Now, last time round, I was not kind about Crackers and Smash. When we did our preview, I made an apology. And at the time, I thought that was the right thing to do, but I am now officially retracting that apology.
I thought you might.
Never have I seen a team more unwilling to let a fight finish than Crackers and Smash.
They are so eager to just stop the fight at any possible moment.
Oh, flipper's broken. Better forfeit. Just stop the whole competition. It's fine.
I did notice that they were the ones first to start yelling cease, and they were yelling it the loudest.
My absolute favourite part was when one of them really passively aggressively just shouted, "Fine then, keep fighting," which roughly translates to "Fine then, do exactly the right thing."
I mean,
it's just...
So what happened here is that the person on the trigger for the flipper was a bit keen to fire it, and then aftershock.
Oh, what? Opposite? I think they weren't firing it because they were worried about exactly that happening. Smash was sat on there for a good long while before they eventually hit it.
Yeah.
And
maybe.
the damage was done.
I think what we can definitively say is that they hit the button at the wrong time because Aftershock was then under the flipper and tore a bunch of it out from underneath it.
Which didn't have that much bearing on the fight, and things could continue.
Yeah. And so, like, the thing is, I can sort of see where they're kind of coming from because, like, the arena takes a big bit of damage and sometimes they stop the fight when that happens. And I don't think there's ever really been a situation where they've had the flipper torn up. And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think there's been a situation where they've had the flipper torn up and then the fight... Well, and then what do? Does the fight carry on or not? So I can sort of understand that there was confusion.
I mean, I realise it's really testing people's memories to go this far back, but in Heat A of Series 10, I think it was, that happened in one of the opening melees, last week.
Was the flipper top? I mean, the spikes went mad, didn't they?
Before that, there was a panel fell off the flipper. It was in the very first melee, I think. So Sabretooth, Donald Thump, Behemoth.
What
I'm fairly
panel
sure
fell
it
off
was in
the
that.
flipper? Oh, was there what, tiny bits of edging or something?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a tiny bit of edging. It was a bit from the back.
Oh, yeah. That's not the same, though, is it? Like, that's very
I
different
mean, it's
to
pretty much
what...
the same. It
not the
couldn't
same
close
because-
properly from there. The flipper was out of action for the rest of the fight, and they carried on because it didn't really matter.
But this was like, I don't know. This was... I can almost understand the confusion, but obviously the right thing to do was carry on fighting. And what really
This
made
was
me
damage
laugh
done
is...
by a competitor. That's the difference. Whereas in Heat A, it just damaged itself. That's the difference here.
Okay. I've lost where I was going.
Sorry, have I taken the wind out your sails there? My bad. I had one moment of real disappointment at the end of that melee where I'd written a note I was really proud of. I'd put play to the whistle, thinking that there'd be a nice conversation about, cliches and a bit of, oh, Ryan likes football. And then Dara said it. He stole my note, and I'm not happy about it.
Oh,
But it's so obvious, though, isn't it? If the fight is going to stop, there will be lots of red lights and noise.
Yeah.
There's no need for confusion. You know the rules. Keep going until you are officially told to stop. And if you don't do that, then you are completely deserving of whatever happens.
So what made me laugh is you've got Crackers and Smash, and then one member of the eruption of the Aftershock team saying stop, cease, and yet everyone is still going. Like no one actually, as far as I could tell, actually stopped at any point. They're all still like moving their robots around and stuff, which really cracked me up. I was like, oh, stop, but I don't want to be the first to stop.
It's like going to a buffet. Everyone wants to go up and get their food. No one wants to go up and get their food first. You don't want to be the trendsetter in that situation. You want to be the sheep. Because you can't trust that everyone else is going to stop. And I can't help thinking that although there was all of that good-humoured chat afterwards with the serious undercurrent of annoyance to it, everyone was playing the same little game in their head of, what if I stop and no one else does?
Yeah, definitely. Like if they weren't playing that game, one of them would have stopped. Like the Crackers and Smash would have actually stopped, as opposed to kept going while saying to everyone else, "Please stop." It also made me laugh afterwards when they're sort of talking about how. So obviously, Eruption flipped Aftershock straight out of the arena in quite a spectacular move, and it was described by the Aftershock team as Eruption coming up from behind and flipping them out.
It was right in front of them, wasn't it?
I've watched that fight quite closely. They were right in front of them. It was really obvious what was about to happen there. Like you were front on, and Eruption got under you and flipped you out.
I'm fairly sure they were driving at each other. So it was either going to be Eruption gets under them and flips them out, or they absolutely muller Eruption's lifter. It's really... Basically, they were definitely fighting at the time. They had not stopped.
No, no one stopped fighting, really. I don't know if this is one of those things where I don't know if it's been edited in a way to sort of... I don't know I don't know how edited this fight is. I don't know how realistic the timing is between various things happening. Because obviously there are a bunch of cutaways between Aftershock tearing the flipper up and then us actually seeing Eruption flip them out of the arena. Because there's in terms of the broadcast time, and it feels like there's plenty of time for everyone to realise this fight's not stopping, everyone get back into it, which is what it felt like they did, and then didn't want to admit to it afterwards.
You wouldn't be accusing them of manufacturing controversy, would you? Little episode 6 shout out there.
Yeah, they were doing that. I mean, so after the fight there was, I think, a fairly genuine sort of bit of talk in that control booth about what was going on. I think people were sort of like, it was the usual British thing of sort of, it's okay, or whatever, like whatever conversation it was, while sort of like you could just hear in their voices they're really annoyed about what happened, like sort of trying to blame someone else but not directly blame them.
Trying to laugh it off.
Yeah, but they're all going,
ooh, this guy said stop. Ooh, maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. Oh, isn't this all fun?
Oh, so awkward, so funny. And then, so I think that was like a fairly genuine thing. And then after that, there were lots of shots of like Michael, especially sort of looking a bit. Well, I just think he was just I think he was just like wandering around. I think he was just like, that was it. I don't think he was feeling anything in particular. But they're sort of like bringing up this whole thing between like the Aftershock team and Eruption about they've got that little pact about not taking each other out or whatever, which I think is bogus. And then they're sort of cutting in these shots that with that backstory and with the way they're presenting it, make it look like they're all walking around looking a bit moody. But I don't think they were at all. I think they were just like, that's all done now, and that was it. I think it was edited in a way to make it look like there was a lot more tension there than there was.
Yep. Would it have been so much easier for the BBC if someone had just walked out of an interview instead? Put that on Twitter.
Oh dear.
I'm not sure if it's a good thing or bad thing that we've had one of the most spectacular out of the arenas so far, and we've barely mentioned it because we're talking about controversy instead. I mean, it's good to have a flipper-powered out of the arena. It's good to have a spinner-powered out of the arena. But when you get to combine the two, that is quite something.
A rim shot out of the arena.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of, I'm going to get you halfway and you're going to send yourself the rest.
That's quite a big dent in that wall as well that Armstrong put in it. It was quite amazing.
It's not even a dent, it's more of a gouge, isn't it?
Yeah, they pulled a big chunk of it out, and then did I read in the AMA that stopped Killalot from actually getting out of the arena?
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, they did some damage to the arena floor.
Yeah.
It looked a lot less severe than last time, which makes you think they may have actually properly upgraded the floor.
Yeah.
Because they've taken a chunk out of it that before would have bent that whole panel up and completely ruined the usability of that arena panel until it was completely replaced.
I think the arena is tougher this year, slightly.
But I'm guessing they never thought they'd need to reinforce the top of those walls, did they?
No.
Or the lighting.
All the lighting, all the spikes. I think it's tougher in some ways, less tough in others.
But then again, no matter what you do, these machines are going to find a way of breaking it, aren't they?
Yeah, there's enough energy and power in these weapons that there's not a lot you can do to prevent destruction eventually.
And what we had in the next fight, even if it wasn't the arena getting revenge on robots, we did have probably the first truly brutal and unnecessary moment from the House Robots we've had of the reboot.
Yes, we did.
I don't know how you feel about that, but I kind of like it.
I would be more okay with it if Killalot did that beheading of Gabriel, if he did that after the countdown timer had finished.
Well,
so this is...
But pause. You were just saying about the last fight that you don't know if the timing and the timeline of what we're seeing is entirely accurate.
This is
true. You
true.
honestly think that if they've got that shot of Killalot cutting that off, they're going to precede it with 10 seconds of nothing just to appease you?
They could have interjected the judge pressing the button to start the timer earlier, and then I do think there was enough time of Gabriel not moving that they could have done it. Maybe this is the way it's edited, and if it's the way it's edited, it doesn't really change my point. It's annoying to sort of feel like the House Robots are interfering that much with the fight, that the timer starts, like we see our big timer, countdown timer, and then immediately Killalot comes and beheads it. And later on in this episode, I'm sort of jumping ahead a little bit, later on in the episode, a similar thing happens. Crackers is arguably immobile, and then they go, oh, yeah, that's immobile, hit the button to start the timer, and then immediately Killalot comes and picks it up and holds it in the air for the rest of the 10 seconds. And in both these cases, I think it's fine. It doesn't actually change the outcome of the fight because those robots were probably immobilized, but it just it bothers me from a sort of doing it properly point of view. It's just like, that's just not quite right. And maybe in live when it actually happened, it was sat for 10 seconds without moving and everything was fine. But like the way it's edited and presented makes it look like the House Robots are screwing with that countdown timer. It's like the BBC have given us a very clear indication of when the timer starts. It's on screen. It's really obvious what's happening. And then they've sort of made it look like the House Robots are interfering with it, which is just a bit annoying to me.
I understand why that annoys you. I think it's a level of pettiness that even I wouldn't stoop to. It's one of those things where there have been times, even in the reboot, where House Robots have genuinely messed with the result of a fight. And this is nowhere near that. And something that we've kind of been asking for is to see more of the post-fight stuff when the House Robots do this kind of thing. So if what I think is happening and that they are trying to show us more of that, I'm okay with this as a way of doing it. Because I don't want them to have to basically put in 10 seconds of dead time to justify it. I think because it's very clearly not messing with the outcome, Gabriel was dead, Crackers was dead, it doesn't worry me.
Crackers is interesting because it's dead because Killalot sat on it, which is another thing that kind of bothers me a little bit.
They were in the CPZ.
I know, but like...
You can take damage from the House Robots in the CPZ.
Yeah.
It's their fault that they're small enough to go under it. It's a quirk of the design. There aren't many other robots that could have happened to, but they are one that it could.
I mean, in both the times this sort of like notably happened for me, you're right, it doesn't really affect the outcome of the fight, but it could have done, it could have been a situation where there was a robot that was on top, and then I don't know. It just doesn't quite sit right with me, and I agree that it's a bit petty and a bit small. But if there's one thing I can do, it is pick on really little things and find them irritating.
What, like Sir Killalot was with crackers?
Yes.
No, I mean, the two things you've mentioned there are very separate arguments. So the whole thing of the house robots potentially going in too early after a fight, that's fine, that's its own separate thing. What you're doing here is basically arguing against the existence of house robots in the first place. Because there's no point them being there if they can't damage an opponent when it gets too close. That's the idea, that's the concept. They are there as a dynamic hazard.
Yeah, that's fine. I want to I think I'm going to have to rewatch that moment where Crackers ends up under Killalot, because it's like, I feel like the flame pit is not part of the corner patrol zone. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe it is counted, but for me it's sort of a right angle shaped area that does not include the hazard that's in that corner, right? And I don't know, I have to watch closely, but it's not, in my memory, Crackers was not really in the corner patrol zone. It may have like grazed the line a bit.
I think they were started coming out, and then either got dragged back in or reversed back in. This is kind of a whole of the ball, whole of the line argument now.
Yeah, it's...
Does the whole of the robot have to be in there? If so, does that mean that a robot like Jellyfish has an inherent advantage over other robots because it's so hard for all of it to be in there?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one to call.
If Nuts is in a fight and the whole wheelbase of the robot is in, but one end of a chain is out, does that count? And the simple answer is we don't want to have to care. If you're in there, if you're near there, that's your own fault. Or good driving from your opponent, one or the other.
Yeah, and I think most of the audience doesn't care. I think it's because I often do pick on tiny little things that it does bother me. It's just part of who I am.
To be fair, we both pick on tiny little things. It's just that your choice of tiny little thing is wrong. I couldn't even finish that without laughing. No, it's... I think it's so well ingrained in what the show is that I don't even bother questioning it. And maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe I should question it more.
To be clear, I'm not making the argument that the house robots shouldn't be there. I do like the house robots. It is part of Robot Wars, and that's fine. And part of that is that they do occasionally interfere with fights. It doesn't make it any less irritating when it happens, though.
I think it... The issue I have with this conversation is that I know if this were a different fight, I'd probably be more opinionated on it just because it would be against a robot that I liked. And if this had cost something like terahertz a place in the final, I'd be angry about it.
Yeah.
So really, I'm being... hypocritical maybe isn't the word, but I'm being inconsistent with this. And it annoys me when I'm inconsistent, because being inconsistent is so damn easy.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's really easy to sort of like brush all this off because it doesn't really affect the outcome of the fight, and because neither of us particularly like Crackers and Smash, and it's like, well, there we go, whatever it happened. But yeah, I think, just as a, I don't know, it's not right. It doesn't really matter to me what robot is affected by it. It still bothers me sometimes when the house robots do interfere with things, or seem to interfere with countdown timers, or do unreasonable damage to a robot during the fighting time and stuff. And it's, it is what it is. Like I said, it's part of having the house robots there. I'm fine with the house robots. It still bugs me when it happens, though.
I think the key thing for me is that I'm confident that what happened on the day was above board. If it then comes across as being potentially dodgy in the broadcast, I'm okay with that as long as the truth is that the sporting competition remained legitimate. If we had... the kind of shenanigans that we saw in Series 7, where you could reasonably accuse the producers of wanting Crackers and Smash out of the competition and using Sir Killalot as a way of doing that, then I'd be worried. But I don't think it's anything like that.
No, I'm not. Again,
So
I'm
not trying to say that you're accusing that, for the record. That's
good.
Very far away from what I'm trying to say. But I guess I'm not annoyed about it because I have a certain amount of trust in what's going on.
Yeah. Okay then. Well, I hope it was all above board.
So I'm just trying to work out where we are in the whole episode thing.
Do you have any more like notable fights you want to go through, or we can jump on to like, judges stuff?
It's difficult to talk about fights in this episode because we've kind of addressed them in reverse order of interestingness, which also happens to be the order in which they aired. So, the best fights came early. I suppose out of the battles that are left, the last really interesting one to talk about that we've somehow avoided so far is Aftershock Carbide.
Probably one of the most anticipated fights, really, isn't it?
Yeah, although it was never going to be a long fight.
No.
And it was only going to be a satisfying fight if Aftershock won it, let's be honest. I think even the most diehard Carbide fan would be bored by the result that we had. And really the manner of it. It's kind of gone the way that one of these fights should, in that Aftershock have got a good uppercutting hit on Carbide. But what you're seeing here is the defensive elements of a Spinner. In terms of when these robots come head to head, there is nothing of Carbide to hit except bar. Whereas on Aftershock, there's a lot more that you can hit. All of the juicy bits are still exposed. There just happens to be a dangerous thing in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And with it being such a more compact design, any hit along that front was probably going to do something, and I imagine what's happened is it's jammed a wheel. And with it being a four-wheel drive system, once you jam one wheel, you jam both wheels.
Are they not all independently driven then? They've got like one motor on the right that's doing both wheels?
I'm fairly sure of that. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain that's the way it works.
Is that still four-wheel drive, or is that two-wheel drive?
There are four wheels exerting a force upon the ground to make you move.
Yeah. And I suppose in like a four-wheel drive car, there's one motor doing all four of them. So.
Actually, yeah, that's a way more simple point to make on that.
Yeah, I've argued myself out of my thought there.
Or are two-wheel drive cars only one-wheel drive?
All cars, one-wheel drive.
Although a Tesla would be four-wheel drive at that point, surely. Because do they have a motor for each wheel?
I can't remember. They've got at least two motors.
Well,
I can't remember if it's like one at the back and one at the front.
It?
Yeah, I can't remember if it's one at the front and one at the back, or if it's one on each wheel. I can't remember.
The other interesting thing with this fight is the weapon choice on Aftershock.
What the one-tooth solution?
Yeah, which is obviously a better way of going up against a bar in terms of avoiding being hit in the side of a disc, basically. But surely the whole point of having a weapon like that is that it being lighter allows you to add more armour. And it didn't look like they added more armour. They must have got into that fight underweight. Unless that thing somehow weighs the same as that massive disc, and that just doesn't make sense.
I vaguely recall reading something in the Aftershock AMA about this.
Funny enough, as the person who organised the AMA, I didn't actually read that much of it. Although my question was praised as good, so what more do you need?
Yeah, I saw that. It also cracked me up in the AMA
Asker of questions.
In the AMA when you asked with the producer, it really made me laugh that you managed to get the guy to sort of write the phrase "legitimate competition." That was so satisfying.
Played right into my hands. I forgot that I'd done that as well. Good times.
So someone asked about the Carbide Aftershock fight. Answer from Will_Shockwave. I wonder who that could be. We didn't have time to finish our anti-carbide armour this time. With our single-tooth bar fitted, we have 15 kilograms to spare, which we plan to use with extra hardox. We only had around 2 weeks to build this version of Aftershock, which is why we didn't have everything finished that we planned. So timing issues. They had the plan.
And that, to me, begs the question, why build a new one?
Don't know, would they have got on with the old one? Would they have been allowed in?
You think they would have let this series go ahead without Aftershock in it? Really?
Maybe.
The robot that made, by far, the biggest impression on the last series.
I don't know. I don't know the BBC. I don't know the producer's mind.
They'd be idiotic to not have Aftershock back. Especially given that they have a piece of it in their office, It'd be a bit rude. Although, they'll happily use a man's application video without accepting his robot, so maybe they have no morals.
Yeah. Complete anarchy over there.
Also, I've just not long ago said that was the only remaining fight worth talking about. There is another fight worth talking about, and that is Eruption versus Big Nipper, just for how dull it was.
Oh, Big Nipper. Why did you run away so much? That was such a boring fight.
They had a real chance of getting something out of that fight, I thought.
If they were more aggressive, they could have done something. I think what happened is they lost... The two spikes in front of their weapon got bent quite early on. So I don't think they felt like...
Which was interesting to see, because that's titanium.
So I don't know that they felt that they could easily get under it. I don't know if they were trying to get around the side of it all the time, but then That's what like someone said commentary wise, but like they just looked like they were running away the whole time. It was pretty disappointing, really. It would have been nice if they had at least tried to attack Eruption there.
What it did bring up was a really nice moment that we've had a few more of as we've gone, but this was maybe one of the most obvious where, because there's nothing happening in the fight, we're looking at the judges and listening in on their conversation.
Yeah.
And it was really helpful to hear them saying about, for example, the lack of aggression from Big Nipper being an issue.
Yeah.
Imagine if we'd had that last series.
It is so much better having that there, like seeing exactly when they, Noel's got this huge button that he's quite obviously pressing, like a big arm movement to press this button when he's going to start the timer and stuff.
I preferred it when we had the little weatherman's button, but
I like that we sort of see that. I like that it's much more obvious. There's a bit more transparency with the way the judging is done, and even if it's only for show, I'm glad it's there. It makes everything feel a bit better,
And it's also the start of a bit more transparency, I feel, as well. In terms of, yes, there are judges here and there are humans making these decisions and they are talking through the things they're seeing and what that means if they have to make a decision on it. Perhaps we're only one step away from having judges actually explain why a robot won. Which, of course, is crazy talk, but...
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
That would be amazing.
Even if it wasn't the judges, even if it was, relayed through a presenter, that would be fine still as well. Some justification for some of the calls they make would be nice.
Although, do they want to avoid controversy? Or do they like controversy? Did they like all of the discussion about, PP3D versus Cherub?
I mean, let's face it, would Spinnerproof be going this long if there was not controversy in Robot Wars?
Admittedly, we'd have found it harder to get going. I think that by now we can live without it. By now, I think it's fair to say that we are real authorities on all things engineering. And our words carry a lot of weight in this community. And I think it's also fair to say that if we did build a heavyweight, it would probably win.
Yeah, I think it definitely would. We're the definitive source of news on Robot Wars and of building techniques, the kinds of effective weapons and armour you can use.
We have all of the best information.
If you are, a robot builder and you want to get in touch to ask some advice, you can do that. Feel free.
Plug the Twitter, plug the Twitter, plug the Twitter.
Now's not the time.
Oh, we'd have to end the show if you did that, wouldn't we? That's how that works now. I completely forgot what we were talking about before as well.
I mean, so also with the judges, there was no conversations with a judge this time, which is a bit disappointing.
No!
It's disappointing.
Man.
Disappointing for this podcast because I always enjoy our little conversations with segment, but we don't get to do it because there wasn't one.
Episode ruined. Scrap the podcast. We shouldn't even do an episode if they can't be bothered doing a judges section.
That's it. The cost of this was a lot of fluff spread everywhere else. I feel like there was a lot of like recapping in this episode of things we've just watched and stuff like that. It felt like a lot of fluff going around. And if they're going to do fluff, I'd rather it was fluff that was concentrated in a judges segment that we can talk about and complain about.
Some of the fluff was good. I liked the chat, for example, before the Big Nipper Eruption fight about ground clearances. Yeah. That was more informative in terms of talking about robot combat than any of the judges segments have been. What I didn't like, especially before the Aftershock Carbide fight, was the really fluffy fluff there that just told you it was going to be over quickly.
Yeah, it's just, so much. Here's how they got here. It's like, I know, I've just watched this. There are no ads here. I've got an attention span long enough to know what's going on here, you know?
And the best thing is that by the time the Eruption Carbide final started, there wasn't even 3 minutes of broadcast left. So I was like, well, I know that's not going to the judges then. It's either a very quick out of the arena or Eruption are getting smashed up fast.
Yeah. They haven't got a lot of choice with that because they're not going to have their big heat final and then have another few minutes at the end of that if it's really short of nothing in particular. Like they've got to have that as like the last however many minutes that fight was of broadcast.
Yeah, they are kind of locked into that. Although, if you're going to have fluff, I'd rather have it afterwards because I am the kind of person to check how long is left. So, I have, and this is a big topic at the moment, I have spoiled the result for myself in a sense by overanalyzing.
Oh.
And that is clearly the BBC's fault for giving me things to analyse overly.
It's got nothing to do with you at all. So what do you reckon the overall winner then?
Oh, no, I mean with that fight.
Oh, with that fight. Okay. I'm not asking for predictions of the overall winner.
I know that I have the ability to work out probably most finalists.
Yeah.
I know that if I went through those trailers, there is enough in there. I have basically had to block myself from thinking about things too much with a few of the matchups that I've seen. Yeah. As far as I'm aware, there's enough there to work a lot out, but I'm intentionally not working it out.
Yeah, I'm also not looking too closely at them for much the same reason.
It's a shame, though, because with the trailers, I wanted to basically look closely at some of the robots and see in what ways they've been changed or upgraded.
Mm.
And unfortunately, that does mean occasionally pausing a video, which means also noticing what else is in that picture. It would all have been fixed. That whole thing with people worrying about spoilers would have all been fixed if they just released all the competitor information earlier. Because then we could have looked at all that and gone, okay, that's what all the robots look like. That's what they've done to all of them. Now we can look at some cool pictures of robots hitting each other in a trailer.
Yeah.
But they didn't. So, that's fine. We have to play the hand we're dealt,
Yes.
I feel like we need to create an ending to this now.
Well, I feel like we're done. I feel like I'm waiting for a rating system.
I forgot about rating systems. Okay. I need to work out the best way to send this to you, because as soon as you see a thumbnail of it, it's going to be very recognisable, and I kind of don't want that.
Okay.
But I need to send it to you somehow, so I guess I'll just do it over Skype, because that is at least the least efficient way of doing it, and the most heinous way of doing it, which is, of course, what I'm all about.
Yeah.
Did you just correct my pronunciation of heinous?
No, I was just like, what on earth are you going to send me? Like, as ever, I'm nervous.
You should be. Right.
Left.
You asked for this, so you are getting it. Here is the episode 14 rating system.
Okay. Well, that was anticlimactic.
I've sent it.
I've not received anything.
Well, whose fault was that, Sam?
I blame Microsoft.
Still going.
So, weather's been all right recently.
You know what? I genuinely haven't seen enough of outside to know if that's true or not.
Oh God. Okay. I see some expanding brains.
I wasn't feeling creative enough myself, so I utilised your creativity to my gain. Come on then, tell the good people what you've got.
What I've got is entanglement devices. The small brain is a net in a box. The bigger brain is the ropes with nuts on from Gabriel. Exploding brain, I guess, is fur from Deator. And then, like, mega exploding brain is loosely dangling chains.
From Crackers of Crackers and Smash.
From Crackers, yeah. Those pointless chains that did nothing.
So,
and the net in a box was complete control, by the way.
Yeah, against Ghost Raptor.
Yeah. Just to prove that I do know that.
I was genuinely wondering.
Well, it occurred to me after I sort of mentioned Gabriel, it's like, oh man, I should have done that for the first one as well, because now it looks like I don't know what this robot is.
I think you used that time to look it up, didn't you?
There is no proof of that.
Reveal your search history.
No.
So, using the entanglement devices in front of you, or others of your choice, how would you rate this episode? I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. I don't know why I ever thought I did, but if this episode were an entanglement device, what it would be? Go.
I think what's happened here is that you really liked my idea last week of relating the episode to a prequel meme, but you've decided that because you don't want me to know that, you've gone for a different meme and kind of ballsed it up a little bit.
Don't get cocky, kid.
Oh, God. Oh, I feel like I've just lost the high ground.
Oh, no. Come on. Provide the illusion of closure. Let's do this.
I'm going to have to go with the ropes with nuts on from Gabriel there, because I think when they did entangle the disc of Aftershock, it was quite exciting, and I think this episode was quite exciting as well. But ultimately predictable. So I think it works well. I'm
going to go net in a box because this episode was incredible to start, and then the reality set in, and everything was kind of dull from there on.
Fair enough.
So next week, because I feel like I can do a better job of previews than the BBC can, it's another one with a bunch of new robots in it. We've got Rapid. We've got Bucky the robot.
Oh, God.
We've got Traction.
Yes.
We've got Apex.
Yes.
We've got Vulture.
Okay.
And we've got Terahertz.
Yes.
This is like I've got to mention, actually. I've noticed a bit of a theme. Now, I'm not someone who's very big on, national or local pride or anything like that. But Oxfordshire is very well represented in Robot Wars.
It's shockingly well represented, isn't
Yeah,
it?
we've got Gabriel, we've got John Reed of Terahertz and Beta, we've got Hypnodisc, which was Banbury, and of course, who could forget the absolutely legendary performer from Series 8, Sweeney Todd.
What even is that robot?
I imagine it's your favourite robot to ever enter Robot Wars.
I don't even remember it.
It had Omni Wheels, Sam. Omni Wheels.
Is like Series 8 was like the modern, like the first of the new ones, wasn't it?
I think it was up against Apollo in its heat, and it was about halfway. Didn't go well.
Sweeney Todd. Because the thing is, oh my goodness me, this was prior to us starting the podcast, so
Well, we started that after Series 9, so
yeah, so I didn't pay as much attention back then. It does have Omni wheels.
this was built by people from. There's some kind of fusion testing facility around here. It was built by people from there.
Yeah, I know where that is. They've got, I think, in that same area, I think they've got like a massive laser that they put into the sky sometimes. And yeah, it's amazing how far away you can be and still see it. This looks like it's got like a CD poking out the front of it.
To give an idea of the level of this robot for anyone that doesn't remember it, this is a team that in 2015 still thought that a grinding disc was a legitimate attempt at a weapon.
And a 45 kilograms as well for the whole robot.
Yep. It was made of bad ideas. I don't think they were ready for the kind of robots they were going to be coming up against. I don't think they realised what they were going to be up against.
It's quite spectacularly bad, really, isn't it?
You know what? Looking back at Series 8, there were some pretty terrible machines. I mean, the General springs to mind. Disc Constructor. There were a lot of really bad entries.
I think it took a bit of time for people to sort of warm up to it again and start doing it. I think they were probably scraping the barrel a little bit in the first one.
There were lots of good live event competitors, to be fair. So obviously all the flippers they had. The likes of Storm 2 as well were good robots. Shockwave came in as a really good robot. You had Pulsar coming in with something new, Sabretooth coming with something new, and neither of them really working. And then coming back, one of them working, and then coming back again, not working again. It's still a bit of a mess. But everyone's got ideas now, That whole argument got away from me. Oh, I've just remembered that Chimera was a thing as well, of course.
You can find the show notes for this episode at spinnerproof.com/episodes/14. You can find links there to all the things we've been talking about today. You can also find a link to our Twitter, where you can tweet us something. What can they tweet us, Ryan?
Your favourite prime number.
Excellent. You can tweet us your favourite prime number.
So, in last week's after show, we talked about amp weights. Sam, I understand you'd like to talk about amp weights.
Well, so I've since last week, I've been thinking a little bit about weapons for ant weights. I did a bit of research into ant weight crushers. Is it possible to build a crusher at that weight level that can actually do significant damage?
And?
Hydraulics are heavy, is what I've learned. So you could do crushers with other things, like you get like a high torque servo or something, and I've sort of seen things that do that, but they run into issues where the gearing starts to slip before they start actually doing damage. So I was thinking about hydraulics, and I don't know, I just think you'd really struggle to do that in the weight limit.
The difficulty with hydraulics is that you've got to have a certain amount of a dense fluid.
Yeah.
And that is inherently heavy. I do wonder how efficiently you could do fairly ridiculous gear reductions.
Well, I mean, I just don't know. You can do some pretty crazy things, like pretty crazy techniques to do massive gear reductions in very small spaces.
So worm gears are kind of the obvious one, aren't they?
They do a lot of gearing, but you can do gears that have like internal gearing and all kinds of other weird stuff where there's gears within gears within gears kind of thing. But then it becomes a question of
sort of planetary gearboxes, are you thinking?
Yeah.
And
then it becomes a question of can you manufacture those at that scale and then have them work reliably? I mean, you could probably 3D print.
And then more importantly, can you manufacture them? There's can the royal you and can the specific you.
Yeah, I think in general it's probably possible. I mean, people make very small gears and stuff. I don't think I would be capable of doing it. So I think for my first attempt at building a robot, I think I'm going to back away a little bit from trying to do something as ambitious as a hydraulic crusher. So I was also thinking with hydraulics, in heavyweights, they struggle to do that and still have reasonable armor. I feel like the problem does not, I don't know, maybe it scales linearly, but either way, it's going to be equally difficult to do well in ant weights, so possibly harder as well. So I think I'm going to scale back from that a little bit, bring my ambitions back, and try and think of a different weapon.
That is a letdown, and there's nothing else that can be said about it. I feel like you made a promise to do something exceptional.
Look, I thought about it. I've done some thinking about it, but I think I need to. The first thing I need to do is build a drive. I need to have a box on wheels that moves, I think, is step one before I go trying to figure out, can I fit a hydraulic crusher in something?
That's my level of ambition. I will be happy to make something with a working weapon. And it'd be really helpful if you could show a bit more ambition just to make this a worthwhile thing.
Well, fine, ambition then. I think I can do a box on wheels that moves, and I think that's going to be fine. I do want to do a slightly more interesting weapon. The fact that you've banned spinners is annoying, because that would be an obvious one to do damage. The other one I've thought about that I have mentioned to you is a pneumatic ram that just...
Now this I love the idea of. Again, I don't know how viable it is, but if you can make it work, I'd be completely okay with that.
So the idea is that you use pneumatics to do a flipper, but I don't want something that throws you up. I would like it that throws it away. So either a rod or just a whole panel that can shoot forwards, maybe with a little wedge to give it a bit of air, so that you can grab a robot, point at a corner with a pit in it, and then just fire this ram and just launch them towards the pit, which I think would be hysterical to see. And I've given some thought about how to do that. I was looking into pneumatics, and can you do pneumatics in this scale? And within the limitations of my abilities, and you can buy, obviously, CO2 canisters for BB guns. You can buy canisters with 12 grams of CO2 in them for not a lot of money. The overall weight of those things is approaching 50 grams though, which is a lot. It's a lot of the weight budget gone on just storing the gas, and I'm not sure how well I'd be able to build the rest of the robot. I think this is more plausible than a hydraulic crusher. I think I'm going to have the problem where I'll have a robot that's all weapon with no armor on it. Maybe I'll have paper armor or something.
I mean, for what we're doing, a glass cannon would probably be fine. I don't know what the safety aspect of these things is. That's the thing that I would be thinking more about in terms of, are these the sort of things that you would be wanting to hit with something, or even allow to drop from the height of the average table?
Yeah, I don't know. I think while they're sealed, I think they're fine. I think they you can rough them around quite a lot. I mean, you can buy bike pumps that use these things as well to just quickly inflate a tire. So while they're intact, they're all fine. I don't know what it's like once you've actually pierced the top of the canister. I was looking into. I think that the hardest bit would be sourcing fittings for that thing and doing it. So the ones I'm familiar with are just sort of compression fit on, you just sort of ram them into there and it's just held on. There's no threading on the top of the canister, but I have since found there are such things as threaded CO2 canisters at this size, so you could sort of screw them into something. And I spent a couple of hours one evening trying to find just a valve for that thing that's for that size fitting that I could use. And I didn't find anything obvious, so I don't know if it would be a case of repurposing one of those bike pump things maybe that can take the 12 gram CO2 canisters. So the problem is a lot of the bike pump ones use 16 gram CO2 canisters, which weigh in total something like 64 grams, I think, overall. They're just sort of I'd rather use the smaller, lighter ones. I don't think I need many. I don't think I need much gas in there to do many actuations of the weapon. So
just make a walker.
Yeah, but can I do a walking system in less than 75 grams? Would it?
I don't know. What I am seeing is that these things come at around 900 psi, which is slightly scary. Could you do this without using pneumatics? Could you do this?
That's less fun, though, isn't it?
I'd love to see what sort of elastic power you could use to do this, and if you could then just come up with a torquey enough system to retract it, or send it in as what about a single-use weapon?
No, I'm not in a single-use weapon. I want to win fights, man.
Seriously, make a grabber system and then have this behind it so that if you did get a good grab on someone and had them pointed where you wanted, you can use it as a finishing move. Just have it set up on some kind of quick release trigger, retracted and ready to go, and then
I think not.
pow.
I
That
think
would be
something
amazing.
like some kind of elastic system similar, or something like almost like a bow and arrow type thing on the front of it, that you can sort of like have a motor that's got some kind of like linear actuator on there that pulls it back and then releases it. The advantage of pneumatics is you get a very quick. You could get a very quick reset on it. Right? You
Yeah.
have the pneumatics that fire it out and then elastic to pull it back, and then you've got a very rapid sort of like very quickly punch and then come straight back in. Whereas with this, it would be sort of default to having the weapon extended, and then you've got to like wind it up and then do it.
Yep, there's a lot of theatre to it, and I love that. I mean, if you want to challenge yourself with this, I would happily allow interchangeable weapons, if that tickles your fancy.
I think so. It's my experience in my life. I try to be somewhat reflective and understand who I am and what I'm like. And what I have seen of myself is that I am often very ambitious, and ambitious to the point that I don't achieve anything. So I think this is why I don't want to even try a hydraulic grabber, because I think I will start down that road, fail, and become so demotivated I won't even build anything. So I'm going to try and keep this to things that I think I could conceivably do, and interchangeable weapons maybe a bit further down the line, maybe my second or third robot.
I'll have to do the interchangeable weapons instead then, won't I?
Yeah, do it.
I actually do have a slight plan along those lines.
Ooh.
Although it's more the Behemoth style of interchangeable weapon. It's more attachments than anything.
Yeah. Attach a small axe to the front of it or something.
A grabber.
Oh dear.
It's interesting that you've been thinking of weapons, because I've been thinking far more about armour. And thinking just how ridiculous can you go in the Gabriel style? Because something I've got loads of lying around is thin sheets of sort of craft foam.
Oh yeah.
And I've been wondering if I could use those as armour in some very weird way. Just have loads of a really low density material. The whole fighting a cloud mentality.
Yeah. Just have an actual 4-inch cube of foam. Make it as big as you possibly could of foam, and just hide all the valuable bits somewhere in the middle.
What if robots only have to start off in the 4-inch cube? They can expand
Yeah.
out of it.
Yeah.
So what if I had a load
Okay.
of this really low density foam,
Yeah.
vacuum packed it, and then just had a little servo that slit the vacuum pack, and it just expands out to fill the whole arena?
Could you build like an inflatable, like a slightly more realistic version of that as an inflatable robot?
I mean, you could, but I'm not sure how useful that would be. Whereas my idea is clearly extremely practical.
Weaponized airbag, right? You've got a robot that can very rapidly inflate, and you put it starts off all small, you drive into the middle of the arena, and then you just inflate, and everything goes to the corners. Doesn't matter where you are, pushed into the corners.
That's terrible. I love it.
Oh, that is the best idea I've ever had.